It's 5:30. I'm Tom DeWall, Chair of the Service Committee of the City Council. With me are members tonight, Zach Brooks, Sherry Tice. Our clerk, Melissa Burns, is here, as well as Tom Kletzka, Jeff Hallinan, and John Morris of council members. Starting our meeting, have you had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And do you have comments?
No, they look good.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
I will second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Just a word of procedure. The ordinance that we're going to discuss tonight is part of the presentation. The presentation will come first because it's been primarily driven by your questions of May the 14th. And we've tried to answer those questions, followed by 15 minutes of those who are against the ordinance, followed by another 15 minutes of those who are for the ordinance. And then we as a committee will make a decision. I think you're going to give them 1 minute, Melissa, 1 minute warning on the end of the 15
Yes.
and a 30-second.
Yes.
So with that, can we start the presentation?
And-
Yes,
Just one point. We will not be deciding the ordinance tonight. It's just whether we forward it to the full council. So if we decide to forward it to the
Yes.
full council, then it will go to the next council meeting for everyone to actually vote on enacting the ordinance.
that's correct. We as a committee will make a decision to either forward or to table. Okay. If you look at the first slide, this is just hopefully familiar to you. We talk about the rationale for, we're going to hit these individually. The current street measurements, safety comparisons, physical comparisons, safe streets for all. I'll put a few more words around when we get there. That's a study we've just come up with at the city of Circleville. It started actually in 2023. The Circleville Safety Forces response, truck traffic from Cargill response. Just lost my computer. That's pretty annoying. I apologize. And then finally, downtown stores and businesses. Next slide, please. The first paragraph, that is simply a restatement of the ordinance. This will allow enough room for parking on both sides of the street, allow more efficient traffic flow, safe left turn conditions. The new lane configuration will create wider travel lanes and negate the need for vehicles to illegally park over curbs, as well as reduce the number of incidents involving vehicular crashes. Since our last meeting, we've gathered some more data, primarily from that meeting, that people living on Court Street are somewhat concerned and afraid to park in front of their homes because they've had them banged into, scratched, mirrors removed. They've also, if they're putting children, grandchildren specifically in the back seat, then they have to wait until traffic all goes by because there's not room to open the door with two 10-foot lanes with traffic going in one direction. And I did talk to the majority of downtown businesses and stores, and their concern was that they have a customer comes in, goes into the store, then he's either not safely getting back to his car or has to wait to get in his car. So that's additional information. Next slide, please. The current street measurements. Again, the current status, Court Street has 4 lanes, 2 north and 2 south, no turning lane. Each lane is 10 feet, and the current ODOT specification for a lane is 12 feet per lane. The reason we have 10 feet is because the Court Street is grandfathered, and therefore we may leave it that way until we change the street. The specification from ODOT for a 12-foot lane is, we thought, 15,000 vehicles per day. When we get into the Strand engineering report, it actually can go up as high as 25,000 a day, but we'll again get into that a little later. Main and Court are essentially the sister streets. I believe, John, you were telling me that you were here when Maine went from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. In the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Circleville when that happened, yeah.
And basically, they're identical streets. And the bottom line is, from our perspective, if you have questions about what Court's going to look like, look at Maine. Again, Maine has 3 lanes, 1 eastbound, 1 westbound, and 1 center turning lane. And then in the future, if and when grade separation happens, we put a overpass over the railroad. That actual location has not yet been decided, but I believe we're thinking the chance of it going over Court Street is fairly high. That being said, if this does happen, at that point, we'll have to go to 3 12-foot lanes. Next slide, please. Now, this is specifically in response to questions. We had offered ODOT data, and the question was, is it valid? Jim Stanley went to the Pickaway County Sheriff's Department and actually did counts. So the count on Court is essentially 7,500 per day. Maine is about 10,000 per day. The accidents in the last 12 months, starting with this month, going back 12 months, starting with June, not July, Court had 64 accidents, Maine had 54. If we look at the accidents downtown, because the question is, are these all down by sheets? And the answer is no. And the answer also is, are they all down by United Dairy Farmers? No. Actually, 51% of Court is in the first 100 and 200 blocks, and it's 53% in Maine. So the majority of the accidents reported here are downtown. Finally, if you do the calculation, that's 0.858 accidents per 100 vehicles on Court and 0.631 on Maine. Again, doing the math, that means it's a 60% higher chance on Court Street of having an accident per 100 vehicles than compared to Main Street. Next slide, please. And this is just a graphical presentation of what we just said. And the next slide, physical comparisons. Maine has 2 main intersections requiring a left turn, Washington and Pickaway. Left turns directly opposing each other. And that is considered, we'll get into the report from Strand, but that's safer than 4 lanes without turning lanes. Court has no heavy, large intersections, has smaller intersections, so the chance of having an accident there, because it'll be less frequently used, is lower, actually. And there are no left turn lanes. Now, the safer streets for all, background on that, last year, the city of Circleville submitted application and received a grant. The federal government was putting out a federally funded, grant-funded program for cities to improve the quality of the safety of their streets. There was not a small study, it was a $250,000 study, of which the federal government gave us $250,000, of which the city of Circleville paid $50,000 of it. Like I say, it started last year and it's essentially finished. That's the reason we have the final page of the engineer giving us a report. Our next meeting, on the 30th, we'll authorize, or at least we'll bring forth the idea of authorizing that study and finalizing it this year. There's 3 main corridors in Circleville. There's the UDF East, UDF West, and Court Street. One of their findings was recommended we diet Court Street. Diet being you reduce the number of lanes and put in left turn lanes. The other recommendation was going east towards OCU, putting in a roundabout there at Stoutsville Pike. And that's going to be a lot more money and a lot more engineering and a lot more to do than restriping Court. But the immediate thing they recommended was to diet Court. Next slide. One of the questions was, how will we affect safety vehicles on Court Street. And this is a quote from Brian Thompson. It will not impact us. We already have the similar roads in Pickway and Main Street. The next question was, what are we going to do about the truck traffic coming off Cargill? Talking to Jenna Rose, the plant operations senior supervisor, and this is her quote, "From what I've gathered, the proposal was to restripe Court Street to make it 2 lanes and a middle turn lane. Instead of 4 lanes, I personally see no issue with that affecting semi-truck traffic. I think the wider the lane, the better." They've just recently reconfigured trucks coming in and out of their grain elevator. And the idea is you come off of Main, you come through and you go back Mound. You come off of Mound, go through and back on Mound. So if I'm coming, for example, from 22 East, I wouldn't go to Main Street. I'd just go straight across Mingo and straight up Mound. And so she felt this really isn't an issue. Now, I did talk to, not all, but about 11 of the downtown stores and merchants. And
Comment, question.
Sure.
Were those the stores that are actually located on Court Street?
yes,
Okay.
north and south, within the, what'd that be, 200 block, I think, roughly.
I don't know who you talked to.
And basically, I surveyed nine stores, 9 supported the idea, 2 had concerns. So it was basically overwhelmingly 4-1, but still there were different opinions. With that in mind, let's go to Strand. You should have a letter from Strand there, which came in yesterday, so we could not put it on the screen. Did everybody get a copy that wants a copy?
And Strand is the engineering firm that contracted.
Strand is basically
Do the
the
study?
engineering firm that does a lot of work for Circleville. And in this case, with our grant for $250,000, we went to them to do the study. And Michelle, would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Strand Associates serves as the city engineering firm for our entire service department. They are very intimately aware of many of the projects we have going on in the city of Circleville.
Thank you. If we look at the middle paragraph, our first paragraph, about 4 lines down, obviously I've picked and chosen the information that I want to present. You're certainly welcome to read the entire thing. The Court Street corridor has one of the highest crash densities in the city. This is why they made the recommendation for it. Then it explains what the diet is. A road diet, this is second paragraph, sentence. The road diet typically involves converting an existing 4-lane undivided roadway to a 3-lane roadway consisting of 2 through lanes and a center 2-way left turn lane, which is what we're proposing to consider tonight. The benefits, again, the paragraph with the numbers on it. 1, reduction of rear end and left turn crashes due to the dedicated left turn lane. Reduced right angle crashes as side street motorists cross 3 versus 4 travel lanes. 4 lanes for pedestrians to cross, and traffic calming and more consistent speeds. The other thing I mentioned that we had thought that our 12-foot north-south lanes would cover 15,000 vehicles. Actually, it's 25,000. And he explains there on the paragraph 2 of page 2 that our capacities that were noted by, I gave earlier, makes us a great candidate to do road dieting.
Let me ask you, Tom. So they're saying here that there would be a reduction of rear end and left turn crashes due to the dedicated left turn lane. Does that mean that, for example, if you're driving in the center lane and you stop to turn left, then you're more likely to have somebody bump into you, crash into you from behind? That would be eliminated?
Well, plus if I am driving parallel and someone in front of me doesn't turn their signal on until they stop, and then I'm frustrated, I'm going to swing out potentially into the right-hand lane to get around him.
Oh, I
And
see.
hopefully I will look carefully, but I may or may not do that.
Right.
With the left-hand turn lane, you know what's going to happen. If he's there in the lane, he's going to turn left. And if he's not in the lane, hopefully he's not going to turn left. Then the only other comment, well, actually, take a look at the final page on the picture, but before we do that, go to layout, first paragraph, second sentence. Having 2 through lanes in each direction with no dedicated turn lanes leads to vehicles slowing and stopping in the center lane to make turns, leading to traffic congestion and rear end crashes, which is what you were saying, Sherry.
Right. Yeah, I know when you come up to the corner of Court and Main, you really don't want to be behind somebody sitting in that
With
center
or
lane waiting
without
with their
signals.
turn signal on. It's like everybody tries to get over at that point.
And again, vehicles turning left also need to cross 2 lanes of through traffic, increasing the likelihood of left turn crashes. And then finally go to the back page of that handout. It basically shows we increase the parking from, I should know that, I think it's from 8 feet to 10 feet.
That's correct.
And then you've got the 3 lanes of 12 in the middle, 12 feet each.
So we would gain an additional 2 feet of space for the parking lane, plus the through lane would be 12 feet instead of 10. So really the whole space is increasing by about 4 feet.
What I find is I live on Mount Street, and it's actually smaller than Court and Main. But that with traffic, single traffic, I can go in, open my door, semis go by, I've got plenty of room, and the chance of having someone take my door off is much, much reduced. So with that, I would then go to point B, which is 15 minutes of guest speakers who are against the ordinance. So I'd invite you to come to the podium, give us your name, address, and Melissa will try and give us a 15-minute count.
Evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Aaron Barthelmess, 435 Holiday Lane. I'm going to try to cram this in because I didn't have all this stuff prior to coming here. So I'm going to cover my notes real quick. So the intersection on Court and Main, I discussed the last time I was here about a 5-way switch light. Did we come up with an answer for that? That would help the congestion all in itself. Because with the end of Main Street down here, going on to 22 Lancaster Pike, there's a 5-way switch there. And that greatly improves the traffic pattern down there. On this end of town, it doesn't, because everybody's going straight out of town for the most part.
I can't answer that question. The plan was to change no lights and no parking. They'll make it wider, but the idea of the parking distance from each car will stay the same. There's not going to be any angle parking. And the lights were felt, because of their current performance for us in Main Street, that they would be really not changed to do anything.
I think the mayor would like.
Mayor, please.
However, while there is no current plan to adjust the lights, they can be evaluated to change. So I want to make that clear, that while the restriping is what we're talking about with this ordinance, there is not a definite no that those other steps could not be had. So I want to make that clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that being said, are we going to be able to pursue some kind of cost associated with that? Because
We have a cost.
Okay. Well, I did discuss I talked to ODOT about that. And that's an extreme cost because of the light poles to support the weight of a 5-way switch that's not in that intersection currently right now. So if we are talking about that in future endeavors, just want to throw that out there.
We're not currently talking about it, but if the suggestion is that we do talk about it, then we will start having those conversations. It is not currently part of the plan. But if somebody were to come up to the podium tonight and say, would you consider it? The possibility is to consider it.
That I would definitely do that. That's why I mentioned it in my last part of the meeting is that that's something that I even said that if this was to go through, that I propose from my end that I suggest that there be a 5-way switch at that intersection,
Which intersection?
Court and Main,
Right, Court and Main.
on both sides.
Yeah.
Additionally, with the traffic that goes in a single lane, there's been, and I watched it just happen today several times, people are turning left through that lane, but that is a double lane, yellow line lane going into the bank there. And that's causing people to stop right there in that intersection. They can't go anywhere because the congestion, and this is 2-lane we're talking about, well, yeah, 2-lane Main Street, people are they can't turn right with the sign that's there with the restricted hours. So people are sitting in an intersection waiting. So that traffic cannot flow. So if I'm going, let's say, Main Street this way, and I'm going to turn left into that bank, now you got a mixing bowl going on. So again, that 5-way switch could possibly help that situation out, possibly. But people, common sense, should not be passing over a double yellow line to begin with. That's just traffic law 101. So,
Mr. Barthelmess? Aaron,
yes.
how much was the ODOT estimate for the 5-way?
Okay, based off that, it depends on what needs to be done. If the poles themselves have to be replaced, how many lights we're talking about, we're talking about the wiring and so forth, we're up in $1 million range. Hundreds of thousands alone, because you're talking about putting a new box in, junction box.
Yeah.
You'd have to take the current poles that are there out to support the cabling system that would go across. So it's not something simple.
Yeah.
One thing I like to say about, I know we talked about a grant, there's something mentioned about a grant here. I think some of the streets as we all drive through here, and I'm not trying to go off tangent here, but I'm just saying, what about road repair? Can that not be looked at as well throughout the city? I mean, it's several, I wrote this before. It says several roads to include the side streets, alleys, suburban roads have been patched versus fixed, repaired, and have caused unsafe driving conditions, swerving in and out of lanes to avoid potholes and uneven surfaces. Most of the roads within the downtown areas here are in good condition and should be an example of all the roads within the city of Circleville. The city itself can look great and nostalgic, but if the roads surrounding the city are in poor condition, that would be the lasting impression.
Again,
Right.
thank you for your comments. We're not addressing that tonight.
Correct.
The service department's always working on
Yes.
fixing the roads and addressing the ones that are in the worst condition. You could talk to the service director about that if you're
And
concerned.
again, I think the mayor's point's a good one. We're taking notes here, and these are some things we'll have for future discussions.
Okay. As far as mentioning getting out of your car, any road, when you get out of that car, that's your responsibility as the driver of that vehicle to look in that mirror, even on Main Street. I mean, when we go to B&V, for example, or even Lindsay's, you don't just dart out. You just don't open up your car door. You should be very apparent of what's going on around you. I don't think that even widening the road as it is down here is making an improvement on that, because I don't know how many times if I'm getting out B&V, I'm standing up against my vehicle, but what I actually do is stand behind my vehicle, watch the oncoming traffic. I do not know, but I thought it was against the law to even get a child out of the back seat to oncoming traffic out of the left side of your vehicle. That's something I'll have to find out, I guess, or if somebody can find that out. But I don't think you can do that. And again, I just like to throw that word out there. These words that's just common sense.
Not to be argumentative.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, if you have an additional 3 feet, it's still going to be safer to open that door than if the car is going within this far of your car, which is about what you do today.
If we're talking about, and I'm not argumentative either, but we already have the example of Main Street as it is right now, and I'm addressing what the current situation is right now. I cannot physically open my door fully open on Main Street with traffic coming down. Period. I just can't do it. And there's a lot of times that center lane on Main Street currently right now, it's being used as an offload for vehicles, i.e. Mason's Furniture. When they have a delivery truck, they block that whole left turning lane right there. That's nothing new. So again, and I said this last time, is based off my experience being in North Carolina, is that they have all their intersections center, those turn into the passing lane, period. Because if you're turning, case in point, Main Street, if somebody's trying to parallel park, there's oncoming traffic, everybody goes into that center lane. That's not what that lane's intended for. It's used for a turning lane. So if someone is actually legitimately going to turn left and they're in that intersection and you got somebody trying to parallel park right here, they can't. So they sit there. Now we have a bowl effect again, backing up. When the opportunity comes, they will go out and swerve around. As far as doing the whole entire Court Street center lane, we have what? How many businesses? How many blocks do we actually physically have where this is actually a problem for business? Is it 2 blocks? 3 blocks? I think. So we want to create an additional lane all the way down Court Street.
I think it's also a problem for the residential people that most of us park on the street. Some people don't have garages in the back.
Plus, if you expand and then retract, you're going to have basically pinch points. If you have it all the same, then people know exactly where they are and what they're doing.
Is the same measurement from the railroad tracks on this, from the railroad tracks towards McDonald's? Is that the same width across from curbside to curbside?
Yeah.
I think so.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. But how
There's
much
just no
residential
parking.
area is in that area there?
Right, and there's no parking along that side of
Correct.
Court Street.
So that's what I'm getting at is, do we
Is there
necessarily
parking?
need
Not
to
at
create?
McDonald's, there's no parking, but there are, I mean, there's
On the,
residential's down to the,
Down to the,
to where it
like where that.
changed, where the interconnect.
But it starts narrowing. If you
Comparison.
go down that, it actually does start narrowing. And then we create 2
Next.
lanes down there as well, a turning right and then a single lane going in.
Yeah, this would end at that point where
Okay.
that,
Where the,
we have some other people that want to speak, I believe.
So it only do 15 minutes for the whole side.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
How are we doing on time, Melissa?
5 minutes remaining.
There was some questions in there, so please.
Yeah,
be
right, sure.
flexible with that.
I pause.
Oh, perfect. Good for you.
It makes a good point.
oh, last parting shot. When they did this test, was Cargill not closed? And was the school also out of session? The high school?
I don't understand your
The test was.
When
on
the
Court
test
Street
was
right
down
here.
here, when they were recording the amount of traffic, that's when the school was let out. And then also Cargill's been closed. That's my last.
meaning there would be more traffic if school were in session. And if Cargill was currently operating at full capacity,
which would be more on Main.
which would be more, probably both ways, Court and
Could
Main.
be.
Go.
Mr. Hart?
Wes Hart, live on Pleasant Street. I own a house on Mount Street, lived on Mount Street, a couple doors down from where you live. All the cargo traffic goes on Mount Street. So this whole concept
Indeed.
relating to Mount,
Indeed,
anything relating to Cargill has nothing to do with Court Street,
I agree.
just a comment. I said this last week or whenever it came to council last, we got 4 main lanes going north and south in this town. 1 on Washington, 1 on Pickleway, 2 on Court. Nobody counts Soda Street. Nobody counts Western Avenue. You're going to
Can't
reduce it.
drive on those streets though.
And nobody wants to drive on Western Avenue and Soda Street, but you can. But, you know, everybody goes down Pickleway Street to Walmart, or they go down Court Street. We're going to reduce that by 25%. We're going to take 4 lanes and make it 3 lanes. So that's going to increase the amount of traffic in those lanes and increase traffic on Court Street. Got to. If the traffic is increased, it's harder to pull out of a parking spot on those streets, on Court Street, because there's more traffic and less breaks in traffic Just a thought. It will be harder to enter Court Street from Pleasant Street, Lewis Avenue, and Water Street because now, yes, I know you're crossing less traffic, but more traffic will be in those lanes bumper to bumper compared to spread out in 2 lanes. So it may be harder to enter onto Court Street from Pleasant Street, Water Street, Lewis Avenue, maybe. Common sense, don't open your door. Ohio Revised Code, I believe it's 4600711. You're not supposed to open your door in front of traffic. It's your fault if you get hit. Sorry. It was mentioned about illegal parking, especially down by Evers. If it's illegal parking, why are we letting them do it? I know they're big trucks. We don't want people getting their cars tore up, but we're letting them park in the tree lawn. If it's illegal, do something about it. I just think it's going to create lots more backups. That's the main deal. Main Street, I've been here longer than John has. I know when it was converted. I was hit on Main Street, driving down Main Street. Somebody pulled out of a parking space and hit my car when it was the way it is right now. People have to pay attention. Yeah, a little bit more space will make it better. I agree with the Lindsay's comment. You go to Lindsay's, you got to stand like this. No matter how wide the lane is, you still got to wait to open that car door. No matter if you got 10 feet of parking or 8 feet of parking. 12-foot lanes or 10-foot lanes. I mean, I know there's a lot of work and study here, but one more comment. I know we're grandfathered in with a 10-foot lane. If you do it and it doesn't work, can you go back?
Sure.
You said sure, he said no.
Well, that's right. You're
No, you
right.
can't.
because
If it's grandfathered now to
Yeah.
keep it at 4 lane
That's
because
right.
it's 10 foot, if you go to 3 and we find out, boy, this was a mistake, we're out of luck.
The good news is, if we look at Maine, identical situation. I think
And
the
traffic
chance-
backs way up.
I think the chance of it being a bad decision is low.
And one more. Has the overpass over Court Street already been decided? People are just going to say it's not been decided.
No.
I know this. Converting Court to 2 lanes will say, well, we've already got 2 lanes. We'll just put it on Court Street. It's like, well, we already did half of it. We might as well put the overpass there too. Just a thought. Anyway, the 25% is my big one. It's going to create more traffic in the lanes that are there and make it harder for some things. I understand the other part, the safety, but don't do it.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you, Tom.
How are we doing on time, Melissa?
Minute 50.
Okay. So William Haddix and 531 East Union. And since everybody's been using Main Street as, kind of the sister street, I guess you'd say, to Court Street, since they're basically the same of what's wanting to be done, I see it almost daily. I got a friend that runs a business on Main Street, and I hang out there once in a while. And I see it all the time, especially when a train has traffic backed up and then the train finally clears so that people can continue. And then you get a fire truck, police car, ambulance, whatever the case may be. When they're in a hurry going, pretty good speed, they usually will take the center lane to avoid a lot of the traffic. But a lot of times, if the train is there for any length of time and just letting up, there are still people in the process of doing U-turns to get away from that bottleneck of all the traffic there. And I've seen ambulances, police cars almost have crashes because they're going their speed to get to the emergency. You got somebody else coming around doing a U-turn, and then you've got problems. And they're swerving, going different ways
1 minute.
and trying to avoid, a potential crash. So having that center lane as a turn lane ends up becoming, like someone else said, either an offload point or a U-turn lane. That's just how I see it quite often, and couldn't count how many, like I said, numerous times people there hasn't been any crashes that I've witnessed, thankfully, but there's been some very close calls with the service vehicles because of the traffic there. People get impatient and they just go. And I've heard dispatchers and things letting the drivers of those vehicles know that, there is a train there or there's not. But people just that have been sitting a while get impatient. And when they do their turns, you've got some potential problems.
Thank you. Jeff, I feel like we need to hear from you.
I have a like to speak, but I'm gonna keep it neutral. Neither, I just want to address the council on a few things, things food for thought. I don't mind.
And it has to do with Court Street, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Everything's to do with Court Street. I just don't want to inject my opinion on the situation.
I just broke my own rule, but go ahead.
That's all right. My name's Jeff Coleman. I'm 1480 Kingston Pike. In your report, I just want to point out the one paragraph there at the bottom that says this is a low-cost safety solution when paired with repaving. We just repaved downtown. When is the next plan to repave downtown? That's something I want you guys to think about with costing. I look for like the beauty of our downtown. I don't want us to go through and grind out a bunch of stuff and make how it looks. So just for that, off of your report here, I know safety solutions, and we look at low-cost solutions and everything on how to do stuff and how to increase the safety downtown. All this study work and that study work, nobody looked at just changing the timing on the lights. If the lights are red, people aren't speeding to beat the light. If that light doesn't turn green until someone's there, guess what? They're not flying by Court Street to where you're trying to unload your grandkids. They're not trying to run you over. So there's an option of we already have the existing lights. We're not changing them. We're not buying new ones. It's a matter of programming. And that could solve the safety issue. If this is truly what we're looking for is a safety solution for the downtown business area, retiming of the lights is a low-cost, simple solution to try. Because like you said, once we go to 3 lanes, we can never go back. That's taking Circleville in a direction that it's going to go forever. It's going to change the footprint, the look, the style of our city. So that's all I ask is don't rush to something just because there's a few squeaky wheels. Thank you, guys.
What is the cost of this project?
60,000.
60,000?
Is it guaranteed that it'll be under that number?
Pardon?
Is it
Is it a
guaranteed?
guarantee it won't cost any more than that?
That's what Jim Stanley tells me. He said he basically
I know.
quoted it, and that's the quote he got back.
You ready to get the people that are in favor of it?
All right.
Ready to listen for the others?
Do we have anyone wanting to speak for the pro?
In
I
favor?
just have a quick on how they think that giving more room to people parking will slow down the accidents along with people parking.
Will you please state your name?
My name's Gary Carpenter. I live at 615 Ridgewood Drive. Because I just moved here in December. I live in Columbus, west side of Columbus for years. They did this same thing on Hague Avenue in Columbus, Ohio, because daily cars were getting hit, parked on the side of the road where they went to 2-lane, and it was kind of narrow 2-lane, but the roadway itself was wide, but the parking was small. The cars were literally getting hit and knocked in the yards in a 35-mile-an-hour zone daily, almost. Columbus thought it would be a good idea to take away from people's yards to make the parking wider. They actually took out the curbs, moved the parking in to give them 10 feet of parking. And on top of that, on the side streets, they built little islands that came out to the edge of the parking lanes to try and protect the parking lanes from people coming in. It did no good. People still slam the cars, drive them up into the yards all the time, even with the extra width and things. So I don't see, for the safety aspect, you might not get what you're looking to get. And the other thing is, it is going to create more problems if you're waiting to turn to cross the other streets due to the fact you're adding more traffic into a smaller area. There's going to be a lot more holdups because people are trying to make left-hand turns either way. Just because the traffic going north and south is going to be so much greater. There isn't going to be gaps like you have now to turn. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the city of Circleville.
I don't think we've had anybody get their car slammed up into somebody's front yard yet, anyway, hopefully.
There's been a car in somebody's yard on Court Street.
Somebody just wrecked up there.
Oh, and yes, you're correct. On Main Street.
Wow.
Hi, Richie Verito, 206 South Court Street. Tommy, you asked if anybody was in favor or speaking positive. I'm not going to speak negative nor positive about this situation. What can or may not happen, because I can't see the future of accidents, traffic, how it might have hurt or helped downtown. But if this is something the city is looking at doing, maybe take a step back, look at how this could be a beautification project for downtown. Maybe put an island with bushes, maybe see what you want your city to look like, and then build this 2 lanes into making it beautiful for downtown with trees in the middle islands and center islands, and turning this whole project into a beautification for downtown instead of just 2 lanes. That's my only suggestion to the city.
Thank you, Richie. Okay. Do we have anyone who wants to speak as a positive comment?
Hi, I'm Helen Maddox at 416 South Court Street, which is right between Union and Mill. The question was raised, also piggybacking on the man who said that once we change this, we can never change it back. I think that's a contradiction in terms, because at one point in the history of Circleville, it wasn't 2 lanes going each way, it was 1. And at one point they changed it to 2 lanes. So the question was asked in the peanut gallery over here, if anyone knows why and when it got changed to 2 lanes or 4 lanes, altogether. Does anyone know about that history?
A long time ago.
A long time ago, so nobody knows why, but I just had a little anecdote for you. I don't envy anybody on a panel like this who has to make a decision like this, especially when you've got people in the community who have valid either objections or comments in support. But I had an anecdote because I had some extensive work done on my front lawn, and these were young men, big, strong young men who came. It took 2 of them 3 days with 2 pieces of machinery, 2 shovels, and 2 men, like I said. Well, they finished the project. 3 days later, they were working on my yard, and I'm just talking on my porch with the owner, the main guy, and we're just talking, and he's packing up his stuff, and he's got all his tools and whatever he has to carry out to his truck. And he leaves. I'm standing on the porch. He leaves. He goes down to like one landing that I have, and then down to the sidewalk, and he pauses and literally stops, and he turns around and looks at me, and he has to yell at me so I can hear what he's saying because of the traffic. He says, "It's like a drag strip out here." And I said, "Yes, it is. Tell it to the council." So here was a strong man, didn't have any kids to put into a car seat or anything, but still he was taking a pause back because it is in fact threatening to go out there when you've got 4 lanes of traffic zooming past. It makes you pause for a minute and protect yourself before you end up going out there and having some little accident, like you dropped your keys or something, and now you're in the road.
Mrs. Maddox, do you ever see actual cars racing, like 2 right next to each other?
Oh, yeah,
racing?
yeah, all the time. And this occurred at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. And he commented. Of course, he had been working on my yard for 3 days, and so he was witness to the ongoing situation with the traffic out there. And even I've walked outside my house just to get the mail or something and have been startled because of what you just described, and wished I had my phone so I could get a film of it so that people could see that, yes, the cars, even if they're not drag racing, they're going too fast because they're in a hurry and because they have the room to do it because they have their own lane.
I see that as more of a law enforcement issue rather than
Yeah, that
a
was commented
restriping
on.
issue. I feel like there should be
Yep.
more law enforcement presence on Court Street. If
We,
I mean, well, yeah, and I think that
yeah, and
probably
neighbors,
more
we've talked, sit around, talked
stoplights,
about
more
that
stop
many
signs.
times, that if you just put a police car on, is it Franklin? They would catch people coming, at least on that side of the street. But But yes, so.
I think,
so-
yeah, police presence would greatly improve that speed problem. I see it all the time too. I live on Court Street,
Oh,
so
yeah.
driving out on Court Street is, yeah, the traffic's quick. So,
All right, so I
I
just
live on
wanted to
Mount Street,
encourage you guys making the decision. Appreciate everything that you do.
thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Oh, real quick.
No. Come up. Yeah.
Just to make a real quick comment on that, as far as police presence,
Just
okay,
as a point of reference, last comment,
yes,
quick comment.
police presence. I know we have the automated machine out. Dunkel Road had that for almost a month, to the point where the battery was out. And I talked to residents to go down there. I have to go that way to go to and from work. And the comment was made multiple times, and including a cruiser was out there at the same time, like right beside it. Police presence everywhere. It's not just Court Street, Main Street, all of our main arteries. It's everywhere. So we can't be so biased to Court Street here. That's all I'm trying to say. I know that machine will help out, deter, but if it's not being monitored to check the battery cells in it to the point where it's not even working anymore, the comments from the residents down there, they still feel the wind off the cars going down Dunkel. And that's a 35-mile-an-hour zone. So, yep.
I guess my conclusion from my perspective, and I certainly would solicit comments from the rest of the committee. The studies that we've done show that it's 6% more dangerous to drive on Court Street than Main Street. The studies that we've done show them to be very similar streets. And the study from an outside engineering firm working on a $250,000 contract has said very strongly that of the three corridors, we've got UDF East, UDF West, and Court. UDF East is a potential roundabout, which would not be cheap, but UDF West, huge union. They just redid some work for us, but basically worked on the edges. That where 22 and 23 gather, that'll be extremely expensive, probably is very similar to grade separation.
You mean to put a roundabout at UDF there where 22 and 56
No,
come in?
I'm sorry, where the Southfield Pike comes in by the,
Southfield Pike on 22 East.
on 22 East.
We
by
are
the-
going to have repaving done there, right?
Yes.
They're going to have repaving on both those sections.
Yes. So bottom line is, a lot of concerns were raised, but I guess from my perspective, and I'll speak for myself, the data would say to me that if we're being responsible council members and we're concerned about the safety of citizens in Circleville, specifically the safety of people driving in Court Street, we've done what you asked us to do. We looked at the data, and it says to me that it's more dangerous to drive on Court Street, the way it's currently configured, than it is to drive on Main Street. And on that basis, I would vote. I think we should, why don't we have a motion, and then we can vote,
Do
okay?
you want to make the motion?
If you would, please.
We have some
Council-
I'm
comments?
sorry, go ahead.
I just have one quick question.
Sure.
If you show up that data slide, you'll see that it's less than one car on Court Street accidents per 100 vehicles, and it's less than one car on Main Street. It's not a 60% higher. So your data is actually saying that those two streets are as safe as each other.
What I'm
So
saying, no,
if it's going to come to council,
since I did the math, may I correct you?
sure.
If you look at it, we had X number of accidents on X number of cars. You divide those, and that's where you get the 0.85 and the 0.63.
Yep.
Compare 0.85 to 0.63, that's a 6% higher incidence of accident on Court than on Main.
It's 0.85 of a car. It's still, if you're going to say 60% difference, it's still one accident on each road. 60% greater makes absolutely no sense in that standpoint.
Okay, there's almost one accident, 0.85 per 100 cars.
Right. and almost one accident on Main Street
No,
per 100 cars.
0.65 is not
0.6. It's 0.63. It's
Yes,
less than 0.02% or whatever. It makes no sense.
But it's only a minuscule amount. It's 10 accidents per year difference.
Yeah.
That's
but if I'm in those 10 accidents,
true.
Yeah.
You're both right. There's only 10 accidents. That's more.
and again, you remember the article, the letter from the study that said this is Court Street is let me give you the exact words. I think you're talking about density of accidents.
And thankfully.
Court
we don't
Street
do
is
the-
one of the highest crash densities in the city. Okay? So whether that's 1 or 3/4 of 1, that's still the highest density of accidents in the city.
Thankfully, we don't live in a super dangerous area.
Yes,
Even though there are people who drive recklessly and,
yes.
you know, we'd like to have police posted all the time everywhere, but they're doing the best they can.
They are stretched thin.
Yes. Okay, well, I would like to send this to the whole council so that everyone can be involved in the conversation and make this decision. So I will make a motion that we forward this ordinance to council meeting on August 6th with the recommendation for passage.
For the purpose of gathering other data,
Well, no, I
other
mean,
votes, if you,
right, just put to
Other
the full
opinions.
council, so the
Yes.
the full council can consider it.
do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Duval,
Yes.
Tice,
Yes.
Brooks.
No.
Is there any other business?
I have a question.
If not, I would,
Mayor has a question.
oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Is there any other data or anything that needs to be gathered before this is considered before council?
Anything you-
I would like to talk to Alex, who did the work for us from Strand. And I'm sure that what he gave us was a point in time at the last minute for us to get his opinion. And we've got a $250,000 study there. That's not an insignificant study. And I'm sure there's other data there that will come from that. So I would think that would be something we could investigate and see how close he is being finalized with his report. And if we need to have some more additional time for that report, I have no problem waiting for him to finish his work.
If he'd be willing to come in and speak to council as a whole, that'd be awesome.
I'm sure we can do that.
Council could table this until that report is in also. That's.
You're talking about Safety Streets for All?
Yes, so we get the Safer Streets for All report,
Jeff, will you?
the full report.
My question
You have to-
if you're going back to Strand,
Yes,
if you're going to go back to Strand with some additional questions or information, could we ask them, because they said it is one of the, if timing of the lights would change that drastically? That's a simple question for them. Say, hey, if we change the timing to these lights to green on car versus just green, because they're green as long as you go through there, if that would change this data and by how much would it change this data projected?
fair request. We'll do that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, council.
On the data with accidents, when you say it's on Court Street, the accident's happening, can you look and see if you can find out whose fault the accident is? Because most accidents happen at intersection. So is it the fault of the driver on Court Street or fault of the person on Franklin Street? Because if it's the fault of the person on Franklin Street, then the accident's not Court Street's fault.
I think, Mayor, I'll defer that to you, but I think we have that data, do we not?
I do not have who is at fault for each of those accidents. We would have to go back and look at every report for every accident.
The bottom line is preponderance of evidence would be, this is an accident on Court Street, this is an accident on Main Street. I think the odds are similar.
Because the question was also posed about the intersection of Main and Court, whether the accidents that happen at Main and Court are counted on Court or Main. And it depends on who reported it, like where it was reported from or the direction in which the person who was reporting it came from. So it could be either at the intersection. So if we would like, if you would like that, we will go through every accident report and gather that data.
I'd be glad to help you. That's a lot of reading.
I just had a quick question. I've been noticing a lot more bigger trucks on Court and Main Street out here. Is there any way to restrict the larger vehicles from Court or Main? Like you said, the next street over is way larger. Shouldn't they be using that way larger street?
So because
Court
the
Street.
city of Circleville is is in the center of an agricultural area, we have only one east-west access to the city over the river where those semi trucks come in because it's a state route. And so those trucks do come straight through our downtown area at Court and Main. The thought of a truck route has been thought of coming west from 22 if trucks are going to 23 south. But as far as truck traffic coming from the west, there is only one way, and that is on Main Street.
20, okay. I just seen a lot of trucks and they're not just grain trucks.
Yeah.
Coming in and turning on Court. And I'm like, in Columbus, there's a little town called Valley View. We restricted trucks
Mm-hmm.
on the one street. They could
Yeah.
only use the other street through town.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I didn't know if you guys could do that or
I
have a way to do
think the
that.
major,
Or make them go all the way to the wider street
Yeah.
to come down and cut through.
I think the major problem is the egress is actually Main Street when it comes in. So they're going to come in and circle out that way. So, I mean, I think those are things that we can talk long-term about if there's any options, but right now,
Yeah, because they
that's the only way.
they
in
bottle up
from-
traffic also. And then if you're going to do this, it's going to make it way.
The other thing that we see is traffic coming from the east on 188 onto Court Street South, which by our fire station right here. And I'm sure if you saw in the news just last week and even the week before that, we had trucks making right-hand turns from Court Street South onto Main Street going west. And one has taken out that light pole there.
Yeah, I heard
And
about
actually got stuck on the bells that we put there to try to help reduce that. So it has caused more conversation at the city administration building regarding truck traffic through the downtown intersection.
that. All right. But I just think you might have to curb trucking if you do this. I think
I'm
you're
sorry,
gonna have
excuse
to
me,
Yes.
excuse me.
Thank you.
just slow down on the
Not,
truck.
not the meeting
That's all.
today, please.
Sure. Absolutely.
That being said, do I hear that we prefer to table for the time being until we can get more data from the engineering study?
I thought
We've
you already,
already made the
I thought
motion.
you already voted.
It's
So
already
what
voted.
we-
It's already sent to council.
You already voted.
Council could table it
Cancel can
At
then
that
take us,
point.
okay.
as
That being
one
said-
option. That's one
That
option.
being said, do we have any more discussion? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
I will second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting has